Alright, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about slope-intercept form and how to put some information into slope-intercept form and then graph your desired equation. So it says write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form with the given slope and y-intercept, then graph that line. Well, slope-intercept form is given like this, y equals mx plus b. And it says where m represents the slope, and last class period we talked about what slope was, so m will always be your slope, and b is the y-intercept. Now the y-intercept is where your graph crosses the y-axis. That's this axis that goes up and down. So it could also be written as the ordered pair of 0, comma, whatever that number is. So on number 1, they say my slope is 2 and my y-intercept is negative 3. So all we have to do is substitute this 2 in for slope, which is m, and this negative 3 in for b, which is my y-intercept. And that gives us the equation of y equals mx plus b, y equals 2x minus 3. Now to graph it, earlier in this chapter we talked about how to graph with given values, and you had to make a t-chart and find out what goes in for what variable. But when it's in slope-intercept form, it's actually much easier to graph. So we start with the y-intercept, which was negative 3, and remember it's written in this ordered pair as 0, comma, negative 3. So I come over to the y-axis, again the one that goes up and down, come down to negative 3, and I put a point. Now my slope is 2, but remember slope was actually a ratio between rise and run. It was rise over run. So this 2 is really a fraction of 2 over 1. And to find my next point, all I have to do is go with the slope. So I rise 2 and run 1, which means I'm going up 2 and to the right 1. And then again, up 2 to the right 1. And then here at the high school level, we like to make sure there are 4 points on your graph. So you need to make sure that your graph has 4 points, up 2 to the right 1. If you have 3 points, that's not enough. 4 is the number that we're looking for. So we go up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. When we have 4 points, we get our straight edge, and we connect our dots all the way through. Now take note, my line starts on the outside of the graph and ends on the outside of the graph. It goes all the way through the graph, and it ends in arrows to show that it goes on forever. So you need 4 points on your line, and the line goes all the way through. Let's try it again on number 2. On number 2, they say the slope is negative 3, and the y-intercept is the ordered pair of 0, comma, negative 1. So if my slope is negative 3, that's going to go in for m, so y equals negative 3x, plus my y-intercept. Now this here is my y-intercept as an ordered pair. So the number that we want is the dude that comes second, the one that comes after the 0. So my y-intercept is negative 1, so I have negative 3x minus 1. Now to graph this, we start at our y-intercept, so come to the y-axis, find negative 1, and put a point. Now this time my slope is negative 3, but to turn that into a fraction I need to put it over 1, and this is what is really important. We have a negative 3 slope, but my slope is negative 3 over a positive 1. So that means I am rising negative 3 and running positive 1. So if I were to graph that, I'm going to start from this point. To rise negative 3, I need to go down 3, and to run positive 1, I need to go to the right 1. And again, I'm going to go down 3 to the right 1, down 3 to the right 1. Finally, once you have 4 points, take your straight edge and connect it all the way through. It needs to start on the outside of the graph and end on the outside of the graph, and we always need to put arrows on the end of that. Now, what I want to bring your attention to is that slope of negative 3 again. You need to make sure that when you make it into a fraction of negative 3 over 1, you're putting that negative 3 over a positive 1. So I'm going down 3 and to the right 1, down 3 and to the right 1. You could also make that a positive 3 over a negative 1. You can go up 3 to the left 1. So if I were to go up 3, 1, 2, 3 to the left 1, you can see that it should be going through that point right there. Now what that is not the same as is a negative 3 over negative 1, because a negative over a negative is a positive, and that would turn into a positive 3 as a slope, and that is not what we are looking for. Now, what I want you to do next is compare your slopes from number 2 to number 1. Now, if you look at number 1, my slope is positive. Now, take a look at your graph. If you were to trace this graph from left to right, like you read, notice it's going up. So when you have a positive slope, your graph should be going up from left to right. Now on number 2, we have a negative slope. So if I trace this guy from left to right, my graph is going down. So that's just kind of a helpful little friendly reminder that if your graph is going down, the slope should be negative. If your graph is going up, the slope should be positive. All right, let's look at number 3. I have a slope of -1 and a y-intercept of -7. So I can substitute -1 in for m, -7 in for b, and I get y equals -1x minus 7. Now to graph, I start at my y-intercept, which is -7, and my slope is -1. Now a friendly reminder, -1 is actually -1 over +1. So I should be going down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1, down 1 to the right 1. Once you have your 4 points, you can connect them with a straight edge all the way through your graph and end it with arrows. Now I'm going to do a double check. I have a negative slope, so if I trace my graph from left to right, it should be going down, and it is, so we're doing good. Number 4, I have a slope of 2/3 and a y-intercept of +1. So when I substitute that in, that'll be y equals 2/3 x, +1 here, so +1. Now to graph, just like normal, I start at my y-intercept of 1. And then my slope is already given to me in a nice little fraction, which is awesome. That makes things so much easier. So now I have rise over run. I'm going to rise +2, run +3. So I'm going to go up 2 to the right 3, up 2 to the right 3, up 2 to the right 3. Once you have your 4 points, you can connect it with a straight edge all the way through, end it with arrows. On number 5, I would like you to go ahead and pause the video and try number 5 on your own. Okay, hopefully you got an equation of y equals -1/4 x plus 4. Now what's different about this guy is -1/4 kind of makes it tricky to graph our equation, so I want to graph that with you. So I'm going to start, we said y equals -1/4 x plus 4. I'm going to start at +4 on my y-axis, and then my slope is -1 over +4. So I'm going to go down 1 to the right 4, down 1 to the right 4. And notice I can't go to the right 4 anymore. So if I go down 1, I can't get to where I need to go. When that happens, you need to come back up to your original point, your y-axis, your y-intercept, and go the other direction. So instead of going down 1, I want to go up 1. And instead of going to the right 4, I want to go to the left 4. So you still need to get your 4 points on the line, and then when you draw your line all the way through, it should look like this. Now the reason that that's okay is because the -1 over a +4 is the same thing as a +1 over a -4, because you are allowed to freely move that negative symbol without affecting your actual number. Now I want to do just one more check here. It's a negative slope, so if I trace it from left to right, my graph is going down. We are okay. Again, please pause the video and do number 6 on your own. Alright, hopefully you got the equation of y equals -3/5 x, and I started at my origin at 0, 0. Now, some of you might have put +0 at the end, and that's okay, but you don't really need it, so just so you're aware. So start at 0, 0, and we're going to go down 3 to the right 5, down 3 to the right 5, and I run out of space, so I go back to my y-intercept, and I'm going to go the opposite direction, up 3 to the left 5. Now on number 7, they are giving us an equation. However, it's not in slope-intercept form. So what we need to do is we need to put it in slope-intercept form. Now from the problems above, we know that slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So our goal to get it from this form to this form is to solve for the y variable. So to do that, I first want to add or subtract before I multiply or divide. So I want to start by subtracting this 2x from each side. So I'm going to subtract 2x from the left side and from the right side. Cancel those out, and on the left side that's going to leave me with 3y. And on the right side, remember these are not like terms, so I cannot combine them. And I want it in standard form, so I want this x term to come first, minus 2x plus 9. And the reason for that is we want it to look like this guy. So the x term needs to go in front of the constant. Next, I need to get y by itself, so I'm going to divide each term by 3. These cancel out and leave me with y. Negative 2 divided by 3 does not work out, so we're going to leave it as a fraction of negative 2 over 3. I want the x to go next to it, and then I'm going to add 9 divided by 3, which is 3. So we know we're done because our y variable is all by itself on one side of the equal sign, and we get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 3. Now I can graph my equation. I want to start with the y-intercept, which is positive 3. Oh, let me make it bigger. Positive 3. And then I have a slope of negative 2 over 3. So I'm going to go down 2 to the right 3. Down 2 to the right 3. Down 2 to the right 3. Now, when I do that, I need to take my straight edge, make sure there's 4 points, take your straight edge, connect it all the way through your graph and end it with arrows. Then I'm going to do one more final check, and I'm going to trace it with my pencil here. As I'm going from left to right, my graph is going down, so I know that my slope should be negative. Let's try it again on number 8. I want to solve for y, so we're going to subtract 21x from each side. On the left side, the x's will cancel out and leave me with negative 7y. On the right side, I want that negative 21x to go first, plus 42. Then I can divide each term by negative 7. Now, these will cancel out and leave me with y. Negative 21 divided by a negative 7 is a positive 3x. And then a positive 42 divided by a negative 7 is a negative 6. Y equals 3x minus 6. Now to graph it, I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which is negative 6. And my slope is a positive 3. So remember, this is a fraction of a positive 3 over a 1. So I'm going to go up 3 to the right 1, up 3 to the right 1, up 3 to the right 1. Once you have your 4 points, get your straight edge, connect it all the way through, and end it with arrows. Okay, now what I'd like you to do next is pause the video and solve number 9 on your own. When you solve number 9, you should get subtracted x on each side, divide each term by 3, y equals negative 1 over 3x plus 5. So negative 1/3 because the coefficient in front of the x is a negative 1. And then when I graph it, we start at the y-axis, which is 5. We go down 1 to the right 3, down 1 to the right 3, down 1 to the right 3. And then I double check. Is it going down from left to right? Yes, I have a negative slope. Again, I would like you to pause the video and do number 10 on your own. After adding 4x to each side, dividing each term by negative 8, you should get y equals negative 1/2 x minus 2. Start at negative 2 on your y-axis and go down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2, down 1 to the right 2, and this should be your resulting graph. Now on number 11, we are still solving for y, but notice this time we have an x term on each side. So that's not going to change the way we do anything, but it is going to change the way you need to think through the problem. If I would have given you this equation a while ago, your first instinct probably would have been to subtract 2x from each side, so because 7 minus 2 will give you a positive result. But I want you to remember that here we are trying to get the y variable all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So I would much rather get this guy away from it instead of move it over here and then move everything else over there. So I'm going to start by subtracting 7x from each side. Now on the left side, when I do that, I'm going to be left with negative 6y. On the right side, 2 minus 7 is going to be negative 5x plus 24. Now I can solve like normal. I'm going to divide each term by negative 6. The negative 6's cancel out and leave me with y. A negative 5 divided by a negative 6 will result with a positive 5 over 6 times x. And then 24 divided by negative 6 is negative 4. Now to graph this guy, I want to start at my y-intercept, which is -4, and I'm going to go up 5 to the right 6. So up 5 to the right 6, up 5, and I can't go to the right 6 anymore, so I'm going to go back to my original point, and this time I'm going to go down 5 to the left 6. And notice I can't go down 5 anymore either. So I made it very clear that I want 4 points on your line before you call it quits. But in this case, we can only fit 3 points. And sometimes that's going to happen, and that's okay. If you can only fit 3 points, then only graph 2 points. Don't worry about the third or the fourth point. So graph as many as you can fit onto the graph if it's less than 4. Now, if we go to number 12, notice we have a fraction going on in here. The y is stuck in the numerator of this fraction of 2/5. So, to solve this, the first thing we should do is get rid of this fraction. So I want to multiply my entire equation by 5. And when I do that, 5 times 3x gives me 15x. 5 times 2y over 5 is going to cancel out that denominator and give me a 2y. And then 5 times 2 is 10. Now I have a normal equation that I can solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 15x from each side. And I'll be left with 2y equals -15x plus 10. Then I can divide each term by 2. And I'm left with y equals -15 divided by 2 doesn't work out, so I'm going to leave it as -15 over 2x plus 5. Now to graph, I'm going to start at my y-intercept of 5. And I need to go down 15 to the right 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Down 15 to the right 2. Put a point. I definitely can't go down anymore, so if I go back to my original point, there's also not enough room to go up anymore. So on this problem, we can only fit 2 points on our graph. Not a big deal. Connect it with a straight edge all the way through and end it with arrows. Now, on number 13, it says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the following situations. Yolanda is putting money into a savings account. She already has $300 and will be putting $20 per month into her account. They want you to find the slope, the y-intercept, and an equation to represent this situation. Now, the slope is how something is changing. So whatever represents change is going to be our slope. Now, the y-intercept is a nice starting point, what we start with. So if I were to read this again, Yolanda is putting money into a savings account. She already has $300 and will be putting $20 per month into her account. So she started with $300. So that is going to be my y-intercept. Now what she's changing by is she is adding $20 each month into her account, so that's going to be my slope. Now I can write my equation of y equals mx plus b. So I get y equals 20x plus 300. Now Yolanda is looking to buy a nice TV and will need $1,400 to do so. Use your equation to figure out how many months it will take her to afford the TV. Now they gave us a number of 1,400 here, and we have to figure out which variable to substitute it in for to solve. To do that, I first need to identify what my variables represent. Okay, I need to say x is talking about this and y is talking about this, so I can easily read my equation. Now, to figure out what they represent, I'm going to look at the slope. Now notice the slope said $20 per month. That would be written as like $20 per month. So my fraction would be dollars over month. Now remember, slope was y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So if it was dollars per month, that means y would represent my money and x would represent my months. So x is months and y is money. Another nice little trick that will help you remember what is what, time is always x. So if they give you a time value, which would be seconds or minutes or hours or years or decades, whatever, time is always your x. Now, if they gave me $1,400, the dollar amount would be money. So we're going to substitute that $1,400 in for y. So I can say 1,400 equals 20x plus 300. Now to solve, I'm going to subtract 300 from each side. And I'm going to be left with 1,100 equals 20x. Then I can divide each side by 20. Zeros will cancel out. 110 divided by 2. X is going to equal 55, and a nice label is months. So it's going to take Yolanda 55 months to save up for her nice TV of $1,400, sorry. Now number 14, Rick is on a weight loss program. He currently weighs 223 pounds. His trainer has him on a nutrition plan where he will lose 1.5 pounds per week. So the y-intercept is what we start with. He started as 223 pounds. Now the slope is what he's changing by. So notice that he's losing 1.5 pounds per week. So that's going to be his slope. But be careful, because it's not just 1.5, he's losing that 1.5, which means that his slope is going to be negative. Now substitute that in, and my equation will be y equals negative 1.5x plus 223. Now Rick's goal is to weigh 195 pounds. Use your equation to determine how long it will take him on this nutrition plan. So we need to identify what our x value is and what our y value is. Now notice 1.5 pounds per week. So whatever comes after the word per, which is time, is going to be x. So x is going to be weeks. And then y is going to be what's left, pounds. Now that being said, if they want to weigh 195 pounds, we're going to take that 195 and substitute it in for y. So 195 equals negative 1.5x plus 223. To solve, I subtract 223 from each side. And 195 minus 223 gives me negative 28. Then I can divide each term by negative 1.5. And that should be 28, not 2.8. There we go. And if I take negative 28 divided by negative 1.5, your calculator is going to give you this long decimal, 18.6666 repeating. Now, Rick is not going to be weighing himself every day. His trainer's not going to come up and say, hey Rick, it's going to take you about 18.6 or 7 weeks to hit your goal. In fact, what's probably going to happen is he's probably going to weigh himself once a week when he goes to see his trainer. So you have to decide how to round this. So on the 18th week, when he goes to weigh himself, he wouldn't have hit his weight goal yet. But on the 19th week, he will have, and he'll probably be a little under where he wants to be, which is awesome. So our answer here is 19 weeks to hit his goal weight. All right, that concludes this lesson. If you have any questions, let me know.